Hi, everyone.
You guys.
Let's see here. Just taking a couple seconds to get set up. Okay, so it just popped up on my page. So you'll be able to share that. And then I can actually start a watch party for it or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, hopefully this is.
Did you get that figured out?
I think I did. Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. Jess and I are happy to be here with you today, if I can speak for both of us in this moment. Hi, Christine. So, yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about a body of work, Shadow to Sovereign, that we're developing, which I think is really important, for the times that we're living in, and pretty much any time that we're living in terms of working with the underlying material that we might not be unconsciously aware of, or might not be consciously aware of, and even collectively unaware of too, and how we can shift from maybe feeling overwhelmed by kind of external views as opposed to being able to be in touch with our intuition and inner wisdom, and how to maybe even differentiate the difference between what's happening externally and internally. We're definitely going to dive more into this today, both Jess and I, and have a couple of events coming up that we're excited to share with you. But first, Jess and I were talking about doing some grounding and landing together, which is definitely a powerful part of embodying our leadership, especially during times of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Hi, Christopher. Nice to see you. So I would love to invite anyone that's watching now or later to kind of follow along. And I just want to invite you in this moment of time to feel what it's like to begin to just notice your breath in this moment. Noticing the inhale and exhale. And if you're moving fast or slow or somewhere in between, but just feeling what it's like in this moment of time to connect with your internal world and inner rhythm in this moment. What's it like as you begin to invite yourself into intimacy with your inner landscape and inner plane in this moment of time, without needing to do anything to fix or change your experience in any way? What is it like to give yourself radical permission to welcome everything that's here right now? Noticing any thoughts that might be at the periphery of your consciousness, or feelings and emotional undercurrents that might be present for you right now. As well as any physical sensations that might be here. Noticing what it's like in this moment to really ground and anchor into the resonance and vibration of your inner world. What does it feel like to be connected with yourself and the larger awareness beyond conception of self that you're also in witnessing of? So I just want you to take a few minutes, for anyone that's also joining now, to just feel what it's like to continue to move your awareness inward, noticing if there are any subtle movements that are wanting to happen in your body and allowing those movements to happen. If there are any ways that your body wants to stretch or expand in order for you to become more present and in connection with yourself in this moment, I'd invite you to do that. Noticing what it's like to follow your moment-to-moment impulse and what it is like to land more with yourself in the here and now. Giving yourself full permission to welcome everything that is here and all that feels true. And as we continue our discussion, today, I want you to feel what it's like to continue to track your internal awareness as you're engaging with us externally, and feel free to write any comments and questions that you might have. We can both see them in the chat and we'll do our best to respond. And in your own space and time, just noticing what it feels like at the exact pace that feels good for you to allow yourself to come back into intimacy with the present moment, and noticing how you're feeling in this now, if it's any different from when we started, or if something has shifted or changed in your experience. I know something has shifted and changed for me. I feel more landed and grounded and present in myself, less irritable and agitated. I woke up irritable and agitated this morning. I'm like, uncomfortable in my body, and so I'm feeling less contraction and more fluidity available in my system right now, and a greater capacity to be present and coherent in my articulation and expression. So with that, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and let's dive in.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I feel more landed too, so that, and my heart feels more open. Am I echoing on your end? Okay.
You're not echoing.
Okay, I hear myself. So, okay.
I can plug in some headphones if you think that'll help.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I just wanted to share, kind of as we get started, that Sandy and I were chatting before we hopped on, and both of us are feeling a lot of fire in our system today. We're fired up kind of in our own way, and then we talked about it being a full moon, and it's the Scorpion, which Scorpio is water, but it's also, the sign of Scorpio is all about it's all about uncovering secrets. So it gets to the root of shadows, and that's like shadows within us, but also the secrets and the shadows around what's actually happening in our world right now. And so there's a lot of information that could be causing some confusion for a lot of people right now. And so Sandy and I really feel called to create a space where light workers or people that identify as leaders on the front lines that are in these helping professions can come and ground and be embodied. And just like Sandy led us through that beautiful embodiment, it's practices like that, but also a lot of other ways that we can all connect and find each other. Because I feel like that's what everyone's wanting, is to find their soul family. They want to find the people that we're meant to connect with right now. And so that's, I'm feeling that really, really up for me personally right now, is providing a space for people to find each other.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that, during times of great unrest, I mean, I know the majority of us
and all of us have been inundated with all types of, information, and also living in isolation and moving through, many different, transitions, and our day-to-day and daily activities, the way that we're used to orienting towards ourselves, our identity, are all kind of in flux right now, as we're very physically forced to move internal and inwards. And simultaneously, I've at least been tuning into this, undercurrent of like, well, what can I do, right now? I think there's like a sense of powerlessness that emerges when we're in a state of flux or uncertainty. And we're all looking for a sense of trying to find, the ground of what's here, and I think a lot of us, especially that are kind of attuned to building the architecture for the new earth to a certain extent, are tuning into, okay, well, what are we moving into right now? What are we collectively sensing and birthing ourselves into right now? How can we come together in grounded, community and show up as the innate leaders that we are? What kind of tools and practices do we need to commit and devote ourselves to so that we can show up in our own internal sense of clarity and coherence, and not take on everything that's happening in the external world, and all the different levels and layers of chaos, that are out there experiencing, or even amplifying our own inner experiencing to a certain extent. I know that for me, I've been moving through a lot of different layers of collective grief. I've been having resurgence of fragmented parts of myself or old childhood wounds, that are coming up to be seen and witnessed. And there's all this almost unintegrated shadow material that's being catalyzed by the collective shadow that's being unearthed, as we're all being forced to kind of confront the kind of deeper undertones of our fears, of our mortality, of death that we're witnessing, of sickness, of the vulnerability and fragility of life. So how do we hold our own anchor and center, as leaders, as individuals that have answered the call to be of service and to live in purpose and on purpose in this lifetime? How do we cultivate these different skills and abilities while not getting swept up by the external world, and continue to be clear conduits of truth and light, within the darkness? And so, because obviously it's, shadow to sovereign, we need both parts. We need both that integration between shadow and light in order to kind of be holistically grounded and integrated and able to be of service. So how do we welcome all that we are with radical permission, is, the question that I've been holding, lately, too.
I love that. And because the one thing we don't want to contribute to is the divide and conquer, that's how we lose our sovereignty, is when we're separated and divided, and then we allow fear to come in. And so I really believe that the first step in being the new archetypes too, architects of the new earth, is to come together and prioritize coming together right now, especially. And so just being willing to come together and to claim your sovereignty in that way is super empowering for people. And just being willing to show up and say, how can I be of service? Like, how can I truly be of service right now?
Yeah.
I think that's a big question, I think, on the hearts of a lot of people right now. Yeah.
Definitely. Hi, Caitlin. Thank you. Love you too. Yeah. I think it's definitely on all our minds, lately. How can we be of service? And simultaneously, I think there's a vulnerability, in terms of stepping into, service during, times like these, when we are feeling so overwhelmed. I at least have been needing a lot more rest and, time to move internal and not be as externally focused as I was, and maybe even in deeper investigation of how externally focused I was all the time. I'm seeing a question from...
Yeah, that's a great question too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a question from Christine. What happens if you're the only one awakened, the only awakened one around the people you're around? Yeah, that can be hard. It's like,
and I think that's part of the process, actually, is to feel isolated and alone. But it doesn't mean it's forever, but it is part of the process to feel alone.
Yeah.
To feel your own energy and then step into something new.
Yeah, and it's interesting, this quality on of being in our aloneness, reclaiming and recall our energy, really sitting with ourselves on the deepest levels. And just to kind of answer, Christine's question, if you're the only one awakened one around you, it's a lot harder when you're holding that, the pull or anchor of consciousness and awareness, and other people around you might not be on the same vibe. As trailblazers, I think we struggle with that a lot of the time, or might even with our perception that we're aware of something that other people aren't. And that's kind of where divisiveness, comes in. Some people might not be attuned to the entire holistic perspective. And I would say we might experience that amplified when we go home to see with family, and be with family, and other people that we have like close relationships with, that we might be spending copious amounts of time with right now because we are in quarantine. And so how do we hold our own polarity and stay anchored into our internal truth, even when the external world around us and then the people in our most immediate environment might not be holding that same frequency? And it's practice, right? It's this continuous practice of coming back to what is most present, what is most true, not allowing ourselves to become hooked and hijacked, which can be like a lot easier said than done, sometimes. But it's this, how do I live in observation of what's happening while staying in deep connection with my internal world and the currents of my inner truth, and really acclimating to an embodied understanding and frequency of that. So how do I continuously build relationship with myself so that I know that I actually don't even have the capacity to abandon myself. I always have this internal foundation to come back to, no matter what's happening, externally at the same time.
And I want to speak to what Caitlin said as well about struggling so much as an empath living with others.
Oh my God, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's big, but I also want to say that even though it might feel like we've all taken a huge standstill and that everything stopped in their tracks, it's actually, I believe it's the opposite is happening, that we're being forced to sit with ourselves in discomfort, but that's actually fast tracking the awakening for a lot of people, including us. Yeah. Because I understand that urge to go inward when we're triggered and run away, maybe not run away, but go get our personal space. Yeah. And when we can't, we're kind of forced to be like, oh, I can sit with this and I'm stronger than I thought.
So. Yeah. So whether you happen to find yourself alone in isolation or, around, other people at the same time, we always have the invitation to move back into our internal world and even investigate the ways that we allow ourselves to be distracted, from our, true, path or our, purpose, or higher truth or boundaries even, within those parameters. I've definitely had that kind of patterning as someone that's been of service. It's way easier for me to focus on other people's problems and the world's problems than it is to sit with my own and, expand my discomfort for being with, my experience at the same time. And you're talking to someone that went from a month out, a month before quarantine, going through a breakup and then straight into quarantine. So I've been having to sit with all kinds of layers of my experience and grief and never having actually lived alone before, so that this has been a huge adjustment for me, having absolutely nothing to distract me besides my cat from my inner experience, and seeing all and being an observation of all the ways that I try to distract myself from being with the here and now and the discomfort of my experience, and the invitation to continuously come home and show up for myself, even though I, maybe have a desire for other people to be showing up in a certain way, or to be distracting and interfacing with other people in a certain way. And seeing all my distractive tendencies that come up, or my addictive patterns that come up, within that context, it's for me, it's been deeply illuminating and uncomfortable, and also an evolutionary catalyst that's been extraordinarily transformative, even in the pain and the discomfort of it all. So a very intense experience.
Yeah, and I think that's good you brought that up, because I think people that are watching and potentially wanting to work with us in this way, or come to maybe our immersion, are possibly sitting in some really heavy stuff that they're not quite sure how to navigate. And how do I keep ascending, if you will, or how do I keep moving through this when I'm in isolation and everything's stopped? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about, is like, this is how you continue to show up as a leader. This is how you continue to be in your sovereignty and take your power back and think for yourself and know what your intuition feels like. Not even from us. Like, Sandy and I aren't here to tell you how to do things. We're just here to invite you to get into your body and to get into your own knowing. And then from there, do what you feel like is best in your life. And so I think that's important to note as well. This is how you can actually be of service, is to take care of yourself in this way.
Yeah, we're not selling you on the like 12-step method or a quick fix, or if you're fast track to enlightenment. But this is, we have a powerful opportunity in being in isolation, having to move internal on the deepest levels to be able to familiarize ourselves with our inner world on this very deep and profound level. And when we can practice that in community, practice deep embodiment and presencing and deep seeing of each other, witnessing each other in community, that can really hold the anchoring point for all of our inner work and development, so that we can actually show up in the way that we deeply desire to be of service, so that we have a clear translation point, and that actually can be a clear conduit for what's wanting to come through, as opposed to having crossed wires because we're being inundated with so much information. And the tendency to not want to practice is going to be really strong right now. Believe me, there are so many days where I want to walk past my meditation cushion. Not that you have to do meditation, but this is really about what are the vehicles that are going to actually support you in deeply attuning to and becoming grounded into presence with your own inner ecosystem. How can we continue to create and build a deep and strong foundation so that we can continuously come back into our own sense of deep inner alignment, so that we can show up and be of service and have a higher level of accountability, because we're being held through the process of that in community at the same time. It's why I have a number of different mentors on Fast Style, or colleagues on Fast Style, and other people that can be mirror reflectors for me on my path and process, and might be able to see and witness and reflect where I can't see myself. And I think it's for that reason that community right now is so important. Feeling held in community is so important, because we can't do this alone, I mean, we could do it alone, but it'd be really, really hard to do this alone, right now.
Right. Well, that's why a lot of people that are, wanting to be like Christine was saying, there's a lot of pressure or perceived pressure, right, to be leaders right now. I would say that we're not really meant to feel pressure of it, I don't think, but because it's not really our job to convince anybody to do any change. It's really our only job is to clear ourselves enough that we can be a strong anchor for people that are like, hey, I like your energy. I like what you're saying. I'm resonating with what you're putting out. And that's how they can then be able to plug in to the anchor that we've already established within our own body. And so I hope that, because I, for a while, have felt that pressure as well of like, how can I really lead right now when I feel like I'm floundering? And maybe if we got rid of that idea that we have to show up in a certain way, that we don't have to have that pressure, that we just have to do our inner work. And that's the best service we can have right now to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to be fucking bright and shiny.
No, we don't need to be bright and shiny.
We don't need to be bright and shiny. We can be visceral. We can be raw. We can be real. We can show up in our deepest grief and pain. In fact, I'll say I will trust you more if you do, because I don't. People can sense incongruence, and when we're not showing up in full congruence, that shows up and translates energetically, and people are not as liable to trust us or even be magnetized. I think there are a lot of, individuals out there that are also struggling with, it's like, okay, like I want to start a business, I want to show up in my leadership, but I'm afraid to be my authentic and, true self. And, this is something I struggle with. Like if I allow myself to be all of me, will people still love me? Will people still be around? Will people trust enough and believe in, the services, that I have to offer? And this is like a radical invitation. It's like trusting and believing in ourselves enough to show up and realize we can take like the pressure off, because we connect most deeply with each other when we're showing up in the full spectrum of our authentic truth. And when we're giving ourselves radical permission to welcome all aspects of ourselves to be here, all aspects of our messy, beautiful, profoundly beautiful, humanness, which we all, we're always in experiencing of this. And it's like I trust the people the most that are actually showing up in congruence with that, all the time. Yeah. So this is an invitation. It's like, let's connect with each other on these raw, vulnerable, deep levels, where we're not hiding or in opposition to any aspect of all that we are. And we're, through that process, that's how we shift from shadow to sovereign. That's how shadow comes into light, when we're not in opposition to any aspect of all that we are, and we're welcoming it. And that's where true fluidity and magnetism and, flow and, grace comes online, when we're actually in the continuous practice of surrendering and opening into that space, allowing ourselves to be deeply received by the world around us, by deeply receiving ourselves at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so much good stuff here. And I feel a lot of people wanting something like this, or just an opportunity to speak in their truth, speak authentically, and be seen authentically in this process. So I think that's another thing that's going to be helpful in this as well, is providing that space for people to be seen and then speak authentically as well.
Yeah, it's like the juiciest stuff, it's like I feel like the most nourished when I am authentically allowing myself to be fully seen. I'm not living in opposition to any aspect of myself. I'm even welcoming the opposition and the resistance that I have to being seen in that moment. And I'm extending that same invitation to other people, and the intimacy that it can emerge from that space is so deeply nourishing and profound and yummy. And it's like what I fucking live for, So
yeah. Well, that's being truly alive, which is what I feel like that's what we're being called to do, is to like drop out of our head into our heart and our body and live and feel, the fire, feel everything right now, as a way to be in your sovereignty. Yeah. Because that's how we empower ourselves to be sovereign, is we own everything, own our experience fully, and move out of that space of being a victim, right? A victim of what's happening. We move out of that victim into full responsibility for our experiences. And I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, that's when we feel the most juiced up and turned on and alive, when we're radically welcoming, all that we are. At least that's when I do. And seeing a question from Christine, what about work situations or other people? I feel like there are certain roles you play. Yeah. It's a good question, right? It's like, so there's these like specific ways that we've been, showing up and in these specific roles that we might have oriented our personality or identity around this for a really, really long time. And I feel like this is like a time where all of that's actually being in question. Like, what roles am I playing? Are they actually authentic for me? Or am I giving away my power and energy out of habituation, as opposed to actually abiding and allowing myself to be expressed from that divine impulse? And how do I start to reclaim that power? By investigating and getting curious about those roles I play, and actually exploring whether they feel nourishing for me or not to continue playing those roles at the same time. Is it really empowering for me? Is it empowering for other people for me to continue playing those in this role? And is it actually deeply in alignment with where I'm at now? So I think this is a really potent time to be investigating and getting under the hood in that way. And how much permission can you give yourself to not actually buy in and play into those roles that you were playing? And what do you want to play now? Like, do you want to play a role now, or is it really about letting go of the roles and fully being you on the deepest level?
Yeah. And I also love that question that Christine brought up, because there's a lot of professionals right now that are questioning their profession, and they're toying with the idea of leaving it. And here's what I tend to tell like my clients that are in that same position. Take it slow, because I feel like as leaders, we're being meant to bridge. We're not being, I don't think we're meant to completely leave the medical model, or be, like be the nurse, be the therapist, be the, whatever role you're playing, still be there, but bring your light. Because I believe we're changing what it means to be in those roles. We're changing the meaning of what does it mean to be a therapist? What does it mean to be a coach? What does it mean to be a nurse? And so, or even a doctor right now, so stay there, but bring your light to it so that you can be the change from the inside instead of just leaving the paradigm. So it's personal, everyone, it's a personal decision there, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's beautifully said, Jess, and just articulated. There's something about acknowledging with, compassion and awareness and curiosity what roles we have been playing. And, sometimes in that we might feel angry because we realize we feel like we've been abandoning our truth on a certain level. And yet we don't need to abruptly end the role that we've been playing. It's an opportunity to actually be in an inquiry around it and slowly kind of unhook or shift the way that we've been relating with ourselves, or showing up in that specific role, or giving away, energy in certain ways that might not necessarily feel most in alignment. And there's really something about honoring the exact pace that feels good for you. It's like, how do I, holistically, begin to kind of shift out of this old paradigm, way of relating, and maybe the role that I've been playing, as I move into this like new way of relating with myself without abandoning, the wisdom and the journey of, my past, at the same time. Yeah. Like, how do I honor my past and future at the same time, so I can not abandon myself in any aspect of the process, and actually show up cleanly and be able to move into a cleaner expression of all that I am in this new paradigm expression of myself. And it doesn't have to be in this like, I'm suddenly like cutting out all these things that I'm doing kind of way, but moving at the exact pace that feels good for you.
Yes. And that's so important right now, just to move at a pace that feels good for you.
Yeah. If I could give like any like, if I could give any feedback or, advice, it'd be like, tune to and honor the exact pace that feels good for you. Things might be taking a lot longer than, they usually take. Honor that time. We're processing so much in our system right now, and giving ourselves all the time and space we need to nurture ourselves and tend to our inner garden and foundation is what is going to actually stabilize the foundation for all these ways that we actually want to show up in expression and service at the same time. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody else have other questions that are watching? I can't tell who's all on right now, but if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, if there are any other questions, comments, and feedbacks, I can talk good today.
We can talk about our webinar coming up next week, and then our event, if you'd like.
Yeah. So we're going to be running a webinar next Thursday. So if anyone wants to hop in and continue the conversation, we're running like a free live masterclass like next week. So we're going to be posting details for that below, embodying our leadership during uncertain times, and doing deep experiential exercises and group discussions, so we can really orient towards our own inner ecosystem and show up in truth and alignment, so that we can be of service in the way that we desire. And then we're going to be doing a have like a 3-hour kind of mini retreat immersion around a similar topic the next week on the 17th. So we will be posting details and links about that. And I'm noticing, you have anything else to add to that, Jess?
No, I'm just really excited. So yeah, if anybody resonates,
I'm excited too.
Yep.
Yeah, we'd love to play with you and just collaborate and co-create in that space. And I'm just seeing Caitlin saying, sometimes I turn to getting things done to numb experiencing my emotions. I'm like, oh yeah, I so hear you, sister.
Yeah.
Our webinar is going to be on the 14th at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, to noon Mountain Time. So I think East Coast, that'll be, 1 p.m. And then California, that's 10 a.m. And then anyone else that's anywhere else in the world, you'll just have to convert that because I can't do that in my head right now. But
and then our 3-hour event is on the 17th. It's on Saturday the 17th from 11 to 2 Mountain Time.
Yeah. So, on the 17th, we'll have a longer time to kind of drop in, and it'll be very experientially focused. We'll be doing kind of like a deep immersion, deep discussion, and really recalibrating our inner ecosystem and energy system, and being in deep investigation and inquiry around the roles that we're playing, right now, around what our true authentic self, looks and feels like, and how do we embody that more, and how do we show up in our leadership with all of ourselves, not negating any aspect of our experience or all that we are, so that we can show up in deeper service, because we're all very much needed right now. If you have a gift, this is the time to be offering it. If you have wisdom, it's a time to be offering it. The world needs anchoring, right now. The world needs ground right now. So the more that we can actually tend to our own inner gardens and inner ecosystems and become the ground, the more that we anchor the collective ground at the same time. And it doesn't mean you have to do it perfectly, because there is no perfect. There's just being you and fully you, and the divinity that you are, and the beyond you that you are, and being a clear channel conduit for that. The 14th is a Thursday. Yeah, so Thursday is the webinar, and the Saturday on the 17th will be the deeper immersion, where we'll get a lot more time and spaciousness to explore all these different topics and really get to be together. So beautiful. Is there anything else, Jess? What do you think?
I don't think so. That feels complete for me. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Well, it feels complete for me too, unless there are any other questions. And we will be posting the links in the comments below. If you have any other questions or something today touched you about what we were talking about, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm sure Jess is extending that invitation, as well. And we look forward to being with you all during our upcoming events. And, even outside of it, if you just want to chat, I'm available. Just hit me up on Facebook, or email, I'm totally available for connection and love diving in. Yes, Caitlin. Yeah, we're going to post the details like as soon as we end this below in the comments. And then, we look forward to seeing you there. And I hope you have a nourishing day. Be true to you.
Yes.
Yes.
Sending lots of love.
Yes. Sending lots of love to you all, and we will see you soon. And many, many blessings.
Bye.